Hi everyone, welcome to Maximum Attack Rallying. Something a little different this time. I don't usually do videos about individual cars, but you're going to have to indulge me this time because I want to, and I think it's an interesting topic. If you've been following the channel for any length of time, you'll know that I'm a big advocate for modernising rallying and really dragging it kicking and screaming into the 21st century. I love Imprezas and Evos and Escorts and all that stuff that everyone else loves, but for me I think the types of car that we're using on rallies are actually part of the problem now. If we want to attract a young audience and bring young people into the sport, I think we really need to be looking at the cars that are relevant to them. And I also think that while I understand why people choose older cars for all the bits they can get and all that kind of thing, I actually think we're missing a trick. Because if you look at newer stuff, there's actually a lot of positives and a lot of things that we could benefit from and actually create exciting, probably quite high performance rally cars. So, what modern car should you choose? I'll give you three guesses, and I don't think you're going to need all three of them. For me, this car, the MK7 Ford Fiesta, could be an ST like this one, doesn't have to be, represents what should be the future of club rallying. And I'm going to explain in this video why I think that. So, strap yourselves in, and I'm going to give you 5 reasons why I think the MK7 Ford Fiesta should be your next rally car. So, without any further ado, let's get on with it, shall we? Oh, stop. Number 1, it's not very heavy. That might seem like a weird thing to say about a modern car, as we always think of them as being heavy, don't we? But this generation of Fiesta came along at a time when cars were actually getting a little bit lighter. So this fully loaded ST3, which has got sat-nav and heated seats and all that rubbish, weighs just under 1,090 kilos, which is pretty good for a modern car. It actually weighs almost 50 kilos less than the previous generation 2-litre Fiesta ST. So if you're going to build a rally car from a Fiesta, this is probably the one to choose because it handles better, goes better, and it weighs less. So that definitely goes in its favour. I would add one word of caution. If you choose an ST like this, you would end up in an over 2-litre class in the UK, and that would mean that you couldn't really take any weight out of it. You'd have to keep it much the same, but any of the other engines, you could pretty much do what you want within reason, and you should be able to get one of these under a tonne. And for a modernish car, that should put you right in amongst everything else. So that for me is a really, really big plus that this car has over a lot of its rivals. Number 2, engines. Like that one. The good thing about the Fiesta is that it's got a lot of different engine options. There's kind of something for everyone, really. So the car I'm in today, the ST, has a 1.6 litre turbo engine. It has 180 horsepower, 200 on overboost, a good chunk of torque, and it's probably the top end option, really. You know, it's, as you can probably hear, sounds pretty fruity and goes rather well. There's actually a guy who started in a Darien who's fitted an EcoBoost engine into that car, and working with SBD, coming up with a turbo spec to suit the mandatory restrictor, they've managed to find 280 horsepower, 320 pounds-feet of torque. That engine spec in a car like this, I think, would make a really impressive little car, and it should, in my view, with the right gearbox, right suspension, right brakes, have more than enough to match the very best Escorts, Dariens and other high-end 2-wheel drive cars. So I think that's a pretty compelling option if you've got the money. The good thing about the Fiesta is there's something out there if you haven't got the money. So if you want a 1400, well, they made one of those. If you want a 1600, they made one of those too. If you want something a little bit different, you could fit the 1-litre EcoBoost engine. That would put you in the 2-litre class in the UK, and I think that's probably quite a good fit. What we've seen from R2 cars is that they are a fairly good match for a 2-litre car, but outside of R2 you'd have the freedom to tweak the engine a little further, and you could reasonably get 200 220, 230 horsepower out of one if you put some money into it. That's quite impressive for me. I mean, the R2 car, or Rally 4 car I should say, is now over 200 horsepower. So with some non-FIA restricted turbo tinkering, I think 220, 230 should be possible. So that gives you lots of options, doesn't it? If you start with the 1600, you can take advantage of the R2 car, use bits from one of those. And even with the 1400, I mean, that's a well-proven engine. It's basically the same as they were using in the Puma years ago. So there's plenty of options. And there's really an engine to suit every wallet and kind of every taste. You know, some people like small capacity cars, some people like turbocharged cars. The Fiesta has something for everyone, and I think that's really important. And it means that should you choose to later on, you can always change the engine as well. You can start with a 1400 and go to a 1600, start with an EcoBoost, end up with an ST engine. So there's lots of options, and I think that's really important. And I think it makes a really compelling argument for the Fiesta.
Number 3, cost. I didn't actually do any sums. Just wrote a rude word like I was at school.
Rude jokes aside, cost matters, doesn't it? Especially for the club driver. So a cheap base car is really important. This ST I'm actually driving is a 2017 car. It's done just over 9,000 miles. But because it's been repaired, it was about £5,000 less than it should have been, which makes it a bit of a bargain. It was just over £7,000. Earlier STs you can now buy for less than 5. If you don't want an ST, well, you can buy a 1600 Ford Fiesta Z-Tech S for under 3. You can buy 1 litre EcoBoosts for just over 3. And I think that makes them a bit of a bargain when you consider what a lot of the cars we've been using for a lot of years, 205s, Escorts, they're going up in value. Mark 7 Fiestas are still going down in value, and to me that makes them a really good buy and just adds further weight to the argument that you could probably have a lot of fun for not a lot of money if you move to a newer car. Simple.
Number 4, handling.
There are far more qualified road testers than me to tell you how well this car handles. You don't need me to tell you that. But what I will tell you, which you probably already know as well, is that a rally car that doesn't handle very well isn't going to be a lot of fun. Just ask Sébastien Ogier when he had to drive that Citroën for a year. Not a problem with the Fiesta, whichever one you buy. I've driven a diesel and it was still brilliant. And before anyone says anything about it not being rear-wheel drive, I don't care. If you can't have fun driving a Mark 7 Fiesta, I'd probably give up driving if I was you, because they're brilliant.
Number 5, it's a Ford. It says so there, look.
Why does it matter that it's a Ford? Parts. Fords are common, Fiestas are common, they've been the best-selling car in Britain for years. And that means there's loads of bits out there. You can go to scrapyards or on eBay, because scrapyards don't really exist anymore, and buy used bits for them. You can also swap bits from other cars. So even on this ST, you can fit the front brakes from a Focus ST 170, which are a bit bigger. And if you've got a 1.6 Z-Tech S, well, you can fit bits from an ST, rear axle with discs on it, bigger front brakes, that sort of thing. So there's lots of options out there, lots of scrapyard options, which was always the way that clubmen used to build rally cars. There's also a really good aftermarket scene for this car, partly because it was sold in the US and partly because there were so many good deals on STs when they were new. And that means that there's loads of suspension options out there, loads of diffs, loads of engine tuning parts. You could just do loads to the car, and that makes life a bit easier, doesn't it? One of the big things when you're trying to build any rally car is that you need bits for it, and with the Fiesta there's loads of bits. And there's loads of bits to suit every budget, and that includes R2 cars. Don't forget those. They have Riga suspension, AP brakes, tuned engines. There's lots of bits off those that you could use on a road car. So that gives you even more options and even more know-how, because the guys that run R2 cars then are going to know what the weak points are on the Fiesta. So that means that you can use their expertise to make your car better. One Instead, they've fitted a 2-litre Duratec. They've tuned their Duratec to around 230 horsepower, and with it created, I suspect, probably quite a potent little car. You've got to think they've got all of the advantages of the R2 car with the SADAV sequential, Riga dampers, all those nice bits, but they've increased the horsepower by 60 or 70, not to mention a huge big chunk of torque because we're going up to a 2-litre engine. That's a car that would work really nicely in the UK for me, so it just shows what's possible if you're willing to think outside the box a little bit, and I think it really adds weight to the argument as why you should choose a Fiesta. It just works. So there we have it, 5 reasons why the Mark 7 Ford Fiesta should be your next rally car. I think it's hard for me to think of another car that ticks as many boxes as this one does. I think it just covers all of the bases: cost, performance, handling, engine options, weight, all that stuff. I think it has a really good blend. There's faster cars out there, arguably there's better cars out there in some respects, but I think the Fiesta just does a bit of everything, and I think that makes it quite a good overall package. You may disagree with me, and if you do, I would love to hear that. If you can think of a modern car, not an old car, I'm not interested in old cars, if you can think of a modern car that would do a better job than this one, not this one, this is my friend's car, and I think he'd be upset if I turned it into a rally car, but if you can think of a better car than the Fiesta that would make a nice modern club rally car, then I'd love to hear it. So please comment below. But other than that, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it interesting, and if you did, I have to say this: like, comment, subscribe, because everyone says it, don't they? Thanks for watching.